I'm Donna Blanchard, and this is your ThinkTech Daily News for Tuesday, April 21st, 2015. After nearly a month of airstrikes against Houthi fighters in Yemen, Saudi Arabia has agreed today to stop, stating that, quote, the objectives of Operation Decisive Storm have been achieved. The Saudi-led coalition of 10 Arab countries began airstrikes in an effort to stop the advance of the Houthi militia movement, but international aid groups have widely criticized the coalition for what they have described as indiscriminate strikes that have killed hundreds of civilians and for the enforcement of a rigid embargo that has been starving the Yemenis of food, water, fuel, and medicine. Last Thursday, newly appointed Yemeni Vice President Khaled Baha called for a Houthi ceasefire in the face of al-Qaeda forces taking advantage of the Yemeni Houthi fighting. In answer to his request, a senior Houthi official stated that the Saudi-led bombing campaign had to stop immediately. That campaign has now stopped, and a rose by any other name still smells sweet. The deposed president of Egypt, the first freely elected president there, Mohamed Morsi, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison by the Egyptian court today. Mr. Morsi and a dozen members of his administration have been convicted of inciting violence and directing illegal detentions and torture. The death penalty was sought by prosecutors but dismissed by the court. Now, these charges stem from a night of bloody street fighting between Mr. Morsi's supporters and opponents outside the presidential palace in December of 2012. All of the defendants are members of the Muslim Brotherhood, which supported the administration that reinstated a democratically elected parliament there after it had been dissolved by military rule. Prior to the election of Mr. Morsi, but that administration also gave President Morsi broad legislative and executive powers as well as a decisive role in drafting Egypt's constitution. This ruling illustrates the determination of the government of current President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to defeat the Muslim Brotherhood, an 87-year-old Islamist movement that has now been formally denounced by the government. President el-Sisi was the head of military intelligence appointed by Morsi in August of 2012. During a time of notorious abuse of women in Egypt, el-Sisi was the general who admitted to Amnesty International that female protesters were subjected to virginity tests, which el-Sisi defended as a policy in place to protect soldiers from allegations of rape. Workers in Russia are striking en masse after 4 months without pay. Last week, President Vladimir Putin used his annual national call-in show to try to assuage Russians that the country's economic troubles were under control, stating that, quote, experts see that we have passed the peak of the problems. Mr. Putin promised to help dairy farmers get better distribution and prices for their milk, told unpaid workers at the new National Space Launch Center that they would receive back pay, and vowed not to lower public wages nationally, even if his economic advisors pressed him to do so. But apparently, Russians aren't buying it. Mr. Putin blamed the United States for the rise of the Islamic State after the American-orchestrated overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and is currently negotiating the sale of the S-300 ground-to-air defense system to Iran, which would bring about $900 million into Russia. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has recommended that the majority of humpback whale population currently on the endangered species list be removed from that list after 45 years of protections. But now wait, that's not all good news. The NOAA wants to reclassify humpbacks into 14 distinct populations and remove 10 of those from the endangered species list. This will allow the organization to focus on populations facing the greatest threat: Central American, Western North Pacific, Arabian Sea, Cape Verde, and Northwest Africa. The North Pacific humpback whales that breed in the waters around Hawaii each winter and then swim to Alaska for the summer are doing quite well. Donna Blanchard, ThinkTech News.